Hello and welcome to the Wake Up Call podcast. In this episode, Daniel and I spoke with Mr. Brian McGlinchey about the 28 classified pages of the 9/11 documents. Now, before I get to who Mr. McGlinchey is and how you can follow his work, I want to let you know that there are some audio issues in this episode. This doesn't happen very often. This is only the second time this has happened, and I'm not sure why this happened, but there is an echo throughout most of the interview. However, you can still hear everything just fine, and you can still make out all the words. So on that note, Mr. McGlinchey is director of 28pages.org. You can follow his work at 28pages.org. That's the number 2, the number 8, pages.org. And you can find him on Facebook under 28pages.org and on Twitter at 28pages. For more information, please see the show notes page for this episode at wakeupcallpodcast.com/28-pages.
So let's go through what the 9/11 related documents are and what's in each one, and then what are the 28 pages that everyone's talking about.
Okay, I'm sure many in your audience have a familiarity with the 9/11 Commission. That's the most famous of the 9/11 reports. The 28 pages actually come from a undertaking that preceded the 9/11 Commission, which was a joint inquiry of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees in 2002. And that probed the intelligence community's work and failures leading up to 9/11 and produced a report over 800 pages long. The last chapter of that report was 28 pages that specifically focused on financial support of the hijackers that came from abroad. And that is the 28 pages that were completely classified by the Bush administration.
All right, now I want to read a quote that's on your website at 28pages.org. This is from Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky. And he said, "I had to stop every couple pages and try to rearrange my understanding of history. It challenges you to rethink everything." So what's so significant about these 28 pages and what might be in them that would cause a congressman to say something like that?
Of course, not having read the 28 pages myself, I can't say specifically. However, I draw conclusions from comments by others who have read the 28 pages. Perhaps the most pointedly outspoken person on the 28 pages and what they contain is former Senator Bob Graham. He was chairman of that Senate Intelligence Committee and co-chaired that inquiry that produced the 28 pages as part of that much larger report. And he has said that the 28 pages provide insights into specific indications of foreign government support of the 9/11 hijackers. Then he went further and said this chapter points a very strong finger at Saudi Arabia as the principal financier of the 9/11 attacks. Now, of course, there have been many public indications of Saudi support of extremism in general. There are public examples of potential links between Saudi government officials or operatives and the 9/11 hijacker network. What these 28 pages might reveal, however, is maybe that with an exclamation point in terms of naming specific members of the high-ranking officials of the Saudi government who may have ties to this.
And I know the Saudis recently threatened to flood the market of U.S. assets that they own if they are blamed in any way for the attacks. Do you think that's an empty threat? Do you think that's going to perhaps sway anyone's opinion or change this equation at all?
Yeah, that threat specifically had to do, they said if there's a law, a bill working its way through Congress called JASTA, Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, which would lower the sovereign immunity laws so that it would enable 9/11 family members to sue the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for its alleged ties to the 9/11 attacks. And yes, you're right. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia said that if that law were to pass, we would, as a defensive measure, have to divest ourselves of assets in the United States on the chance that those assets might be frozen by a court as that case is working through there. Many people think that was more of a bluff. They point to the fact that by doing such a big sell-off and telegraphing that move, that they'd have their own bad financial circumstances from selling into that and depressing the value of the assets that they were trying to unload. that sounds like an enormous number, and it is. They said 750 billion in assets. However, some observers from the financial community say, you know what, the market is so giant and liquid that really wouldn't have as big an impact as some people might think on the U.S. economy, even if it did happen.
All right, now going back to the content, or at least what might be the content of these 28 pages, is it possible that the Israelis or someone else other than the Saudis are named in there, are implicated in there? Because the statements that have come out from Thomas Massie and from others suggest that this might even be bigger than just the Saudis being implicated.
I think there's a potential. There are indications elsewhere that money was funneled through the United Arab Emirates, for example. I will tell you that there have been, I haven't encountered any specific indications, like when Senator Graham says it points a finger at Saudi Arabia. I haven't seen any example where anybody else specifically references another country. Sometimes there are references to this by people who read it, and they use the plural countries, but it's hard to tell whether they're being generic and trying to obscure, the classified information that's in there by just using a plural or not. So I can't eliminate it. I can't confirm it, based on the information that's out there. But up to this point, overwhelmingly, the vast majority of any reference, and pretty much 100% of the references by people who read it, and the early leaks of the New York Times way back in 2002 and 3 on what's in this, have all been about Saudi Arabia to this point.
Okay, and I don't want to try to put words in anybody's mouths, but when Congressman Massie says that he had to rearrange his understanding of history every couple of pages, to me that at least suggests that maybe something bigger and more than just Saudi Arabia is implicated in this.
Right, and other people pointed to the fact that Congressman Walter Jones said, one of the things that disappointed him most was that the people, he said, what was so surprising, this is a quote, was that those whom we thought we could trust really disappointed me. And some people say, could that be Israel? What do we mean by trust? But then again, you have to consider the fact that we consider Saudi Arabia a so-called ally in a lot of respects, and we sell weapons to them and so forth. So that trust, it's hard to determine how much we should run with these quotes. In terms of rearranging history, another recent quote by somebody who's read the 28 pages, Congressman Rick Nolan of Minnesota, within the last few weeks, he did an interview acknowledging that he had read the 28 pages, and he said, the information presents a clear and startling picture of who financed the attacks, and he said, they confirm that much of the rhetoric preceding the U.S. attack on Iraq was terribly wrong. Now, as I look at that quote and think about the Massie quote, when he talks about rearranging history and so forth, I think back to the principles espoused by George Bush in the wake of the 9/11 attacks, that we would make no distinction between the terrorists and those who aided and abetted them. So it might be that people are pointing to the fact that, wow, we launched forth, lashing out, we've been military involved in so many countries, yet it appears there were these very specific indications that Saudi Arabia had the closest ties to 9/11 of any country. That's, one thought about why people might talk about rearranging history and so forth in terms of how the government's actions in the wake of 9/11.
So who exactly has access to them now, and who has read these 28 pages so far?
These 28 pages are kept in a sensitive compartmented intelligence facility, or SCIF, in the basement of the Capitol building, so a secure facility. Pretty much any member of Congress can read these pages. They just have to send a letter of request to the chair and ranking member of their intelligence committee, whether that's the House or the Senate, and then they're almost uniformly given permission to do that. Now, one of the things that's been most disappointing to me, as I've been involved in this effort pursuing this, is the astonishing lack of professional curiosity that is apparently underway in the Capitol. What I'm specifically saying is that, my best estimate is that out of the somewhat, 545 members of the House of Representatives, probably only in the dozens that have bothered taking a half hour to go read 28 pages that have been described as shocking and causing the need to rearrange one's understanding of history.
Yeah, it's really remarkable when you think about it's only 28 pages, and supposedly these are very significant documents that require you to rethink several things. it's really remarkable that so few people who have the opportunity to read them have actually taken that opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. When Senator Paul introduced Senate Bill 1471, which would direct the president to declassify the 28 pages, at the press conference there, Massey spoke at that press conference, and he pointed to the fact that he's so frustrated about his fellow members in Congress not heeding his urging to read those 28 pages. He said, every day we're up here on Capitol Hill, people talking about how to prevent the next 9/11 and actions they're going to take and so forth. He said, meanwhile, some of the best intelligence we have on terrorism sitting in the basement of the Capitol, and people haven't bothered reading it. And it was interesting as the presidential campaign rolled out, there were activists in New Hampshire waiting to pounce on various members of the Senate and House who were running for Congress and asking if they'd read the 28 pages. And somebody asked, for example, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who is known as one of the absolute, positions himself as the most hawkish, and he tried to work his whole campaign around being the best person to execute the war on terror. He had to acknowledge that he had not even read the 28 pages.
How did these pages become classified in the first place? How does that process work?
After the House and Senate completed their inquiry, they then wanted to publish the results of their inquiry, over 800-page report, and they ended up going through a multi-month period of negotiations with the executive branch on how much information could be released completely and how much should be classified. So they were battling back and forth, and ultimately the reporting is that it was essentially a decision in the Oval Office. It was a George Bush decision to classify these 28 pages. One of the congressmen who's pushing this effort, Congressman Stephen Lynch, Democrat of Massachusetts, he likes to emphasize the extraordinary nature of this redaction, because throughout those 800-some pages, there are many other places where there's a paragraph or a name or a date or an account number or a phone number, this type of thing redacted. And he's read many, many classified documents. It's extraordinary to have an entire chapter just completely blotted out as this one is.
So what are the official reasons for why these pages are being classified? I guess they say that it would be a violation of national security. Is that the crux of it, or are there other reasons?
At a press conference back when this decision was made, President George W. Bush attributed it to the need to protect, intelligence sources and methods. That's a phrase that's, all too easily thrown out there. Sources, protecting sources and methods. The people who read these 20 pages and who are active in terms of campaigning to release them, they're adamant that there is no national security reason, that the vast majority of the material in there could be declassified. They say this is not about national security, this is about protecting relationships, it's about preventing embarrassment, but not about national security.
And is this the first attempt to get them declassified? Or how many attempts have there been in the past to declassify these documents?
Yeah, ever since they were first classified, there's been a fight to declassify them. This chapter was redacted over the objection of many who participated in that joint inquiry, including Senator Bob Graham, who at the time was trying to rally support around having the Senate declassified on its own. There are little-known procedures by which either the House or the Senate can just go ahead and declassify this information by themselves, even over the objection of the president. So it's been a periodic thing. Also, it's interesting to note that at that time, there were the classification in 2003. There was a letter signed by 46 members of Congress, a letter to President Bush urging him to declassify these pages. What's especially interesting is some of the signatories of that letter. They included our current Secretary of State, John Kerry, past Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and current Vice President Joe Biden. So 3 senior members of the Obama White House were urging President Bush to declassify them. We have to wonder, did they carry that advocacy into the executive branch when they ascended to the White House themselves?
Yeah, why didn't they? What changed?
That's a good question. Some might attribute it to partisanship. Some might attribute it to the fact that our executive branch regardless of which party's flag is flying over the White House, there's been a consistent pattern elevating these Saudi relationship and making a priority out of preserving that relationship over potentially the interests of the American people.
So why have prior attempts to declassify these pages all failed?
Well, I think they failed because ultimately they're leaving it to the president to declassify this material, and to this point, it's just been a request that's basically gone ignored. And periodically, this has become an interesting topic since 2003. Back in 2014, there was a pretty big wave of interest and attention, generated by those leaders on Capitol Hill. At that point, Jake Tapper on CNN, for example, did a report, and that prompted the White House to say, well, the president asked the intelligence community to review this material, and that review is underway. That was the summer of 2014, and really the media went without following that up and saying, well, how's it coming, until this 60 Minutes report aired a few weeks ago, and that really is what has really thrust it back into the limelight again. Of course, we're very grateful for that coverage doing that. But it's really been, to answer your question, why are they all failed, it's really, I think, been a kick the can exercise. The executive branch just wanted to keep putting this off and not releasing it because, it definitely would create the indications of what people said about it. It's going to create, quite a reaction to deal with and to manage.
Yeah, can you predict some of that fallout? What kind of things could we expect to see? And do you think that these pages are going to ultimately be released this time around? Or do you think we're going to continue the can-kicking exercise?
Well, first, in terms of the reaction, several years ago, a anonymous government official familiar with the 28 pages was interviewed by the New Republic, and that individual said, if the 28 pages were to be made public, I have no question that the entire relationship with Saudi Arabia would change overnight. So that's the kind of reaction I think we're potentially talking about when people see apparently the level of complicity that Saudi government officials had and the ties that they've had to the 9/11 hijackers. Looking ahead, though, as to the prognosis right now, I think we have moved, thanks to people getting involved, coming to 28pages.org, contacting legislators, contacting the White House, sharing information, and making this more well-known, thanks to the 60 Minutes report and the efforts by the leaders on Capitol Hill and former Senator Graham. I think we have moved now from a question of, will the 28 pages be redacted, to how much of the pages will be redacted. The White House, the intelligence community, have in recent weeks been saying things to the effect of, well, the review should be done by the end of June, and we do expect there will be some degree of declassification. So when we hear that some degree, we obviously, our antenna goes up, we become a little wary of what that might mean. Anything less than, a complete declassification minus maybe account numbers or phone numbers or something like that, is not going to be enough. But I think that is where we're at right now in terms of expectations. I really do think something will be released, but it's important for us to keep up the pressure because in terms of taking the kick the can exercise to the next level, this would be it. It would be to release the 28 pages, but still leaving out some of the most critical parts that caused those jaws to drop by people who read the 28 pages. And I think we'll have some indication when they come out as to whether, if there are reactions and we're not seeing things that really shake our understanding of history and our perception of the decision to declassify them, we'll pretty much know that something important has been left out. And one other thing I'd point out, too, in terms of indications of how much they've shared, is that former 9/11 Commission member John Lehman told 60 Minutes, they asked him, do the 28 pages name names? And he said, yes, the average intelligent viewer of 60 Minutes would recognize them instantly.
Wow.
And there aren't household names, from Saudi Arabia. So, if we're not seeing some prominent names listed there, we'll know that everything hasn't been revealed to us.
Yeah, that's a really interesting and amazing statement.
It's an amazing statement. What's even more amazing is that statement didn't even make it to their actual primetime segment. They buried that in one of those online web extras. Hey, here's how the making of our 60 Minutes segment on the 28 pages. So it was kind of an unusual treasure to find that the most provocative line they elicited in all of their interviews didn't even, for some reason, make their cut for what they put on primetime.
Yeah, that's incredible. So what prompted 60 Minutes to run that report? Because this issue has obviously been here for a few years. Why now? What's happened that caused 60 Minutes to all of a sudden run this report?
I would attribute it to this recent wave of activism on Capitol Hill and Bob Graham's activism. Bob Graham's off and on been pushing this issue since 2003. But then in 2013, in December of 2013, that's when Congressman Walter Jones of North Carolina and Stephen Lynch of Massachusetts, soon to be joined by Thomas Massey of Kentucky, that's when they started, they introduced their resolution urging the declassification of these 28 pages and started getting their peers to want to release them and started holding press conferences and events to draw attention to it. So I think that helped do it. I think people have been pitching 60 Minutes periodically over the years trying to gain their interest in it. I think they just finally prevailed. And that, they have a long production cycle. They were doing interviews for that, as I understand it, in December and January. I can give you an idea of how long it takes them to produce something. So they've been working on that for a few months, and then they aired it at the worst time of the Obama administration. You'll recall it was 4 days before he was set to, I believe, or a week before he was set to go to Saudi Arabia himself.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what some of the fallout will be if they get released. Do you think, other than the changing relations with Saudi Arabia, do you think there's going to be any other major fallout from this release if it is released?
I think there could be, because I think, going back to what that congressman said about how reading these 28 pages revealed that the narrative that prompted our invasion of Iraq was completely wrong. I believe firmly that the full declassification of these 28 pages could really have people question the entire narrative by which the war on terror has been pursued since 2001. If our government covered up a close relationship between the 9/11 hijackers and one of our so-called allies, that we then simultaneously lashed out at a whole host of other countries in the region, it could well reveal a level of hypocrisy that might actually cause the American public to seriously question the entire war on terror, and then the role of Saudi Arabia today, in, for example, in Syria and Yemen.
Well, yeah, that would be great if the American public questioned the narrative of the war on terror, because it's a narrative that definitely needs questioning. But let me ask you, do you see any changes coming in transparency of government and ability of private citizens to access documents and to access these official accounts? Because if the 28 pages are released, it seems to me like that would be a major step forward in increasing government transparency.
I think it could well be, because it would prompt that next question from everybody. What else have they been hiding from us? What else is not true about the war on terror? What else is not true about our decision to invade Iraq? So yes, I think it could be a real catalyst to a demand for greater transparency in a government where overclassification is just an absolute epidemic.
Well, with that, thank you very much for coming on to the show and talking with us. This is a really important topic, and it's something that's going on right now, so it's extremely interesting. Where can our listeners go to follow more of your work?
Yeah, I encourage them to come to 28pages.org. That's 28pages.org. We have a lot of information there on the background. We have frequently asked questions about it. We've got resources to help guide you to making a phone call to your legislators or to the White House on this issue. We have the 28pages.org blog, which has ongoing articles and coverage of this. And we even broke news a couple of weeks ago. We were the first outlet to report on a recently declassified document that had been released last summer that, for the first time anywhere, we learned that a al-Qaeda member had been captured in Pakistan, and the FBI nearby found that he had buried a cache of documents, and among them was his U.S. pilot license inside an envelope from the Saudi embassy in Washington, D.C. So I would encourage them to follow the blog, and then also to keep up with this issue, because The government wants us to become interested, to lose interest in this topic quickly and move on to the next thing, as the U.S. public is all too prone to do. So I'd say if this broadcast this evening today has piqued your interest, stay interested, because the government doesn't want you to stay interested. So follow us on Twitter at 28 pages and on our Facebook page, facebook.com/28pages911. And stay hooked into this issue, stay active, and stay informed.
Well, great. And are there any particular articles or pages at your website or elsewhere that you recommend someone read if they're new to this topic and they're interested in learning more about it?
Yeah, I'd start with the FAQ, which they can easily link to from the top navigation bar. And then I'd browse through the 28pages.org blog and just look at the titles there, and you'll find a lot of articles of interest on a variety of topics and different angles on this.
Well, great. And I want to encourage everybody to go check out wakeupcallpodcast.com/28-pages with 28 as the number 2 and the number 8. So not spelled out, but the actual Arabic numerals. And we'll link to 28pages.org. We'll link to the FAQ there, the Twitter account, Facebook account, everything related to this episode you can find at wakeupcallpodcast.com/28-pages. So that's going to be the place to go for that. And I also want to encourage everybody to follow us on Twitter. At WUC Podcast is the handle for that, at WUC Podcast. And on that note, Brian, I want to thank you for joining us today to help us get to the bottom of the 28-page controversy and spread the word a little bit about why these pages should be declassified and why this is such an important issue. So thank you.
Thank you. I very much appreciate you giving a platform to this important issue.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wake Up Call podcast.
If you would like to listen to more episodes, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on iTunes or subscribe on Stitcher. And check out our website at wakeupcallpodcast.com.
There you will find show notes pages and comment sections dedicated to the show. You can also email us at contact@wakeupcallpodcast.com if you're interested in being interviewed for the show or have any other suggestions.
Thank you.